Hello there, welcome to a new month. I'm Bernice Abubeidulansa and this is the AM show. Thank you so much for staying on with us. And that was an interesting conversation Benjamin had with Hackman Owusu Ajaman. It's a new month with new things like having to pay more for utilities and a lot more. I don't know what your thoughts are. I don't know how you're hoping to manage, but what are your expectations of government? Well, this morning, I've been joined by Divine Pe. He's Senior Programs Manager or Officer at Africa Education Watch. We usually speak to him on education matters, but today we want to find out from him in that sector and beyond what his expectations of government are. And then much later, when we get interactive, you would also be sharing with us what your expectations are. Hello, Divine. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Bernice, thank you for having me.
All right, so let's go straight to the point. What are your expectations? New month, like I said, having to pay for more for utilities, people thinking about how to manage their homes and all that. What are your expectations of government?
All right, thanks once again and good morning to viewers. And then new month, of course, our expectation generally will be in the area of education. And we are expecting that as we are inching close to the supplementary budget, the government, first of all, will use that opportunity to review budgetary allocation to education, because education budget has significantly been cut this year, especially for the goods and services aspects of the basic education budget, which has seen about 43% cut from the previous year, 2022. So for me, that will be the first thing, that when the opportunity comes in the supplementary budget, government will begin to work towards ensuring that financing for basic education goods and service budget particularly is reviewed to ensure that academic work at the basic education level is on the right track. Because even if you look at it, the capitation grant that's supposed to even to be dispersed to school, it is now that the schools are even taking the first tranche of the 2022 academic year. That's the previous academic year. It is now that the first tranche is coming, and the amount that is coming is very minimal. Some schools or some municipalities, instead of receiving the first tranche, about 33% of that of their capitation grant, they are now receiving 9% of last academic year capitation grant. It means that they have not really started taking advantage of this particular 2023 capitation grant yet. So government will first have to ensure that the goods and service budget is reviewed in the supplementary budget and ensure timely release of a budgetary allocation, or especially the capitation grant to schools, and in this specific context, the basic schools. And then, of course, we'll be expecting that government to take measures to address issues that are surrounding the Ghana School Feeding Program. We know that the caterers and their issue of increment has still not been resolved. So government, yes, we have seen in the 2023 budget 10% increment in the Ghana School Feeding Program, but that's just like 5 pesos. The demand of the caterer is that they need about 200% from the 97 pesos to 3 Ghana cedis, which is consistent with the 3 Ghana cedis lunch that the government is paying at the senior high school level. We showed that although the tide seems to be a bit, it may not be stable for long. So government will still have to be able to continue to engage the caterers, so that, again, in the supplementary budget, something can be done, so that as we are preparing to end this second semester and begin the last semester, and of course, the next academic year will also be beginning this year, we will see that issues around in the Ghana School Feeding Program adequately resolved. And then the last one would be the government paying attention to getting the GET fund uncapped, so that the infrastructure caps that are existing in our basic schools are addressed. So it's very important that GET fund steps are taken by the Ministry of Finance in collaboration with the was in a select committee of Parliament Education so that they can get final cap. Already there are steps that are quite advanced in terms of sponsoring of private members bill to get the final cap. So I am believing that this particular month, that particular private members bill will be receiving support of other MPs so that finally when it comes to the floor of Parliament, it will receive resounding support from all MPs so that we can free resources that is meant for addressing the infrastructure needs in our school to be able to solve them. Because as I always mention, there still remain a significant number of schools that are still rather treacherous and dilapidated structures. There are furniture deficits, over 2.3 million deficits when it comes to furniture. So these issues cannot be addressed if the amount or the fund that is solely dedicated for addressing these needs are not free. So we need to get that also a priority in this particular month and going forward.
And so you're talking about the mid-year budget review, the supplementary budget, which usually happens in July. So it means that you're expecting that government will initiate steps towards achieving all the things that you're saying, not that they necessarily have to execute them in June, right? Just for purposes of clarity.
That's correct.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
So the opportunity is now for government to do that. So exactly what I mean.
Right. So we have been highlighting the conditions in some schools across the country. We call it Ghana's schools of shame. And sometimes when you see the emotions attached to the desire of children to have an education, you just get a sense that the campaign on the importance of education has gone down well. It's just left with the infrastructure and the other support services that will enable that to happen. From where you sit, and considering where we are right now in the country's economic state, what will be the priority for you if government, for example, if government had $1 million to pump into education? What are the most important things that must be tackled first before any other thing?
All right, thank you. And I must start by commending JoyNews for your campaign when it comes to highlighting the deficit in furniture in our schools, and not just the deficit, the dilapidated nature of our school building. Your campaign indeed is yielding results, I must tell. So I must comment, and we encourage other media houses to also join the campaign to ensure that these challenges are addressed. So for me, if government rightly have the money to address anything in the education space, first it has to be the infrastructure deficit, because if you have classrooms that are existing and then these classrooms are not occupied with desks for pupils to sit on and be comfortable to learn, then at the end of the day, that particular classroom, becomes useless. So it's very important that a significant priority is given to the desk needs if government rightly have a money sitting somewhere to address the most pressing need in the education sector. Then it has to first of all be at the basic education level, not at the senior high school level. It has to be at the basic education level, and then the focus will be to address the infrastructure need at the basic education level. And then also when it comes to the urban areas, the priority will be how to decongesting the large classes that are existing in our urban schools, because that's one of the challenges the urban schools have. If you go to some of the classrooms, you will see that they have about 80 or even over 80 pupils in a class, and there's no way an effective teaching can happen in such an environment. So I always make the case that in the urban area, the focus must be decongesting the classroom, and that can be done if we be able to expand existing schools. I know government always use the skills of availability of land in these urban areas, but we can still be able to expand these existing schools or able to collaborate with traditional authorities in these areas so that we can be able to identify land to site new school. So that has to be, and then also addressing the infrastructure need, because our study has revealed that is one of the causes of dropout in some instances. For instance, a study we did in 2021, that was trying to identify the dilapidated nature of some schools and their implication. Some parents told us that because of the dilapidated and non-availability of desks in school, they prefer sending their wards to school, and that actually came out in the what's the name? In Sawam. Within Sawam, Oti region, specifically the district name has a bit. So some parents are actually disincentivized in sending their wards to school because of lack of desks in school. So it's very important that if we want to close the remaining access gap in our space, then we have to also pay priority attention to the desk situation in the country.
And since we've brought in the angle of priorities, let me just find out from you what your impression of government's desire to provide laptops to school-going children is. We had the Vice President announce that a while ago. What are your impressions of that?
All right. It is a good idea for us to try to digitize the use of textbooks in our schools. That's okay, because of course the advantages are there. If students have been able to use this digital device, they are encouraged to use them frequently. There's some form of motivation for them to pick the device just to read from it. So that's one of the advantages. And of course, if you want to look at this lifespan, if you are about to compare textbook lifespan, which GES recommends that 5 years textbook should be replaced because their lifespan mostly would have been 5 years. I'm sure that if we are to be replacing this textbook 5 years, the cost for hard copy would have been much higher than that of the digital one. So it's good if you want to digitize textbook usage in our school, more especially also that now that we are talking about integrating of ICT in our education space. So it's okay, but the timing is what is wrong. Right now, as we speak, government is developing, or not even developing, it's almost concluding on the development of a new curriculum for usage at the senior high school level. So I'm sure by 2024-2025 academic year, that curriculum would have been in implementation after receiving cabinet approval. So it means that within a year or two, we'll be starting the implementation of new curriculum at the senior high school level. But the desire to supply this digitized textbook is going to be focused on the current textbooks that are in the system, based on the current curriculum that they are using. What it means is that if we continue at this particular moment to procure this digitized textbook based on the current curriculum that the students are using, within a year or two, it will become obsolete because the content will be changing very soon. So there's a need for us to delay the process so that if the new curriculum is approved and then NACA calls for textbooks suppliers or publishers to tender in textbook for approval. Once NACA approves something, then Ministry of Education has also procured a required textbook that will be used in the senior high school. Processes can begin to digitize some of these textbooks for usage. But right now, I don't think that it should be very immediate. I don't also for a fact that we have not addressed the textbook deficits in the basic school yet, based on the current curriculum that they are using. We are almost into the 4th year of the implementation of the new curriculum at the primary school level. And per our check in December last year, it was only in 3 subjects that textbooks have been supplied in. So if governments would have to make money available for usage of textbook, then it primarily has to be based on addressing the deficit at the basic school level, because that is very important. Teachers continue to face challenge because these textbooks are not available. For instance, they have to teach comprehension in the English language. It means they have to write the passage on blackboard, and how many, I don't even imagine the number of paragraphs that they can write on that particular blackboard, and by the time they finish writing, a good number of the period may have been elapsed. And then also people, some of them, because they may be far away from their board, they may not even be seen very well. So these challenges are existing. The government will need to pay attention to addressing the the textbook deficits at the basic education. As far as the implementation of the new curriculum is concerned, then I'm sure once the SHS new curriculum is in force, we can have the conversation on digitizing textbooks usage in their school.
Thank you for your time, Divine Quest Programs Officer at Africa Education Watch, and he's been sharing his expectations with us this new month, expectations of government in the education sector largely, because that is where his focus and domain is. Well, we will be staying a while on the education sector. There's a conversation about disbursement of loans for students who signed up onto the Student Loan Trust Fund. NUGS is concerned about the delays in disbursement. Much earlier this year in February, they raised concerns about the issue, but it's still not being resolved. So we go back at it and we figure out if there's been any improvement at all in getting the monies to students who need them. And much later, I will be sharing with you details on my new show, The Baby Doctor. You want to stay for that.